Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Overhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Dr. Mary Sanders. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Sincerely, it's my honor to be with you today.
So I like to start with a question where you can take your time to answer. There's a lot to tell, I think, in your story and how you've came to see the world the way you do today. And I would like to hear
Well, whenever I start here, it always sounds like I'm going to have a longer story than what I actually do. But quite honestly, the first thing I want to share with you and the people that are viewing or listening today is that I was born hearing impaired, and so my hearing capacity is half of what an average person hears. And I went undiagnosed for the first maybe 3.5 years of my life. And during that time, hindsight's always 2020. I obviously did not know what was happening to me as a small person. However, I lived in the spiritual domain for the first 3.5 years. I lived in this place between the physical plane and the material plane and the spiritual plane. And I was receiving information and assimilating information, utilizing skill sets that are above and beyond the traditional five senses in which people typically view the world in. And so what ended up happening is that I knew that I was developing information or the ability to perceive and receive information via clairsentience, via direct knowledge, clairvoyance, in order to survive in the world. So I couldn't necessarily hear the physical words that were being said to me by my family or my mother or my sisters. I literally had to feel the emotions of what the message was conveying to me. And so that's how I learned how to cope, in my family. And then when I finally did get diagnosed, it took probably another year and a half before I received hearing aids in order to be able to physically hear what was being said to me. So I was a kind of the kid that, through exploration, I learned how to receive information by touching, by feeling, by sensing. And then I realized somewhere, somehow, some way that how I was receiving information was not quote unquote normal. And so I renegotiated some contracts that I had, spiritual contracts that I had with my family. And so then I tried to normalize my skills to fit into this family. And so I was mainstreamed in my education. Both of my parents were educators. I came from a very Catholic upbringing, and I just normalized my senses. I never got rid of them. They never went away. I just knew when to comment on them and when not to comment. So, there were episodes when I was a young adolescent where I would get spontaneous information and I would attempt to share that with my mother. And my mother would just be like, there's no way you can know this information. And I was just, not from a place, not from an egoic place, but I just had to convince her that I knew what was the truth and that what I was conveying to her was real. Didn't go over very well, but nonetheless, that's how I operated in the world. And so I knew that I had to academically achieve, and so I was a very good student. Through just my own sheer will and determination, I did well in the academic world and went on to undergraduate school to understand chemistry and zoology. And from there, I went to chiropractic school. So I was probably 21 years old when I was entering into chiropractic school. And for the first time, I can honestly say I felt like I was surrounded by people who were considered to be my tribe. They were talking about healing from above, down, inside, and out. They were asking me what I felt, what could I see, what could I sense. And so it was new. It was, a wonderful experience to be validated. And so I was like, really, I can share this information with you and I'm not going to be shunned for it. And they allowed me to explore that. So to make a long story short, that's how I went through my my chiropractic profession. And I knew at a young age, I knew at 3 that I was put on this earth in order to have my hands on physical bodies. I literally get a lot of information via psychometry as I receive and perceive information through my hands. So, as bizarre as that sounds, that's how I ended up choosing that profession. I just knew that that's how I was being guided. And as time progressed, I knew that when I was in practice that I was running an energetic frequency. I was modulating frequencies as I moved from treatment bay to treatment bay to treat people. I knew enough about energy management and intuitively could sense where a patient was on that scale. So I always ran just a notch higher energetically than the patients for healing. And then when I put my hands on people and just kind of intuitively were guided to the area that needed to be served that day, patients were, the comment of my life is, how did you know that that was there? I just know, I'm just going to put my hands where I'm guided to put my hands, and that's how I know. So to make a long story short, I then progressed after 20, probably 3 years of being self-employed as a business person, as a chiropractor. My husband and I moved to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and that was the other side of the world. We left Colorado Springs, Colorado, and went to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And I felt like I was 5 years old again. I didn't understand the language. I didn't understand the culture. I didn't understand my environment. And so then I had to turn on my superpowers in order to be able to receive, the information from the environment. And so that just reminded me, of my skill set. And as fate has it, life just happened pretty rapidly when we were over there. And afterwards, we left Ho Chi Minh City. Of being there for 2.5 years, we moved to Bogota, Colombia. And at that time, I started a nonprofit organization to teach teachers the tools of positive psychology. I wanted people to understand, the importance of meditation, of yoga, of mindfulness, of appreciative inquiry. I wanted to provide an opportunity for teachers to learn how to use these tools so that they could role model them in their school. Um, Things happen pretty fast in South America for this nonprofit organization, and I have to be honest, I was incredibly honored to be able to create content that I thought was going to be delivered in the United States was taken over in South America. And but I knew that wasn't. I still knew internally that there was a calling for me to still be of service one on one for people in a healing and in transformative way. At that time, that's when I decided to enroll in the Academy of Intuition Medicine in Sausalito, California. So I was still living internationally and taking this course online. I had to get over a really big limiting belief system, and that was I had to physically be in a classroom in order to assimilate the information in order to be a practitioner, even though I knew that what I was already currently doing was very energetically based. But once again, I was granted and afforded the opportunity to lean into some of my skill sets and develop them even further. So now today I show up in the capacity as a medical intuitive. I feel like, I get the best of all my worlds. I get to pull from my chiropractic training. I know the body incredibly well, and I know now I better understand the neuroscience of the brain. And then to add the energetic component, I feel so blessed to hold space for people in transformative healing.
Thank you. That's really, really, really informative so that we know how deep this journey has been for you, right? To be able to acknowledge this depth to which you can go. And I think that's a big one, to step from thinking you have to be physically present to being able to do things from the distance. Yeah, it's a very big step. I know I learned to do chakra technique, and we also learned that it doesn't matter how far away someone is, you can always do it. So you don't need to have the person physically present. And yeah, the results are the same. So it's amazing. So I'm very, very happy to hear that you also discovered this capacity and have further developed it. And yeah, maybe you would like to go deeper into this whole topic. Also, the what it did for you, because it sounds like you went through a lot of transformation, but you didn't describe it very intensely. You described the outer changes. Maybe you'd like to go into the inner changes as well.
I'd be honored. Quite honestly, I'm humbled to be able to show up and support people in this way. Something that has been so natural, for me for all these years, and to hold space for that for others is quite remarkable. Um, wow, as far as my own personal journey, I don't even know how to I mean, I wish that my healing was like linear, but it has been anything but that. It's been circular, it's been in and out, it's been wavy, it's been multidimensional, it's been all over the place. I have always sought out as much information as I can, but really, truthfully, my greatest lessons are experiential, for my own well-being. And so that's, because I am so clairsentient, that's how I made such a big connection between the energetic and the physical. So I can literally feel the changes in myself, and I can feel the changes in other people. I have to say that that's why I'm an avid practitioner of yoga, and I exercise on a regular basis, so I know what is mine, and I can detect what is other people. There for a while, I have to say one of my challenges became because I was so empathic. I'll share a story about this, about being a highly sensitive small person, but I was gifted the ability to be able to absorb other people's energies and hold them as if they were my own. And that's a blessing, it's a blessing and a curse all rolled up into one, because as a small person, I didn't realize that what I was experiencing was not my own. So, part of that journey as I developed, I was the youngest of three girls, and my father was a great provider, but he would be what we would call a functional alcoholic. And, in today's world, I wouldn't say there's anything functional about it, but that's the term that society provided. And so, to make a long story short, I literally could not hear him. I could not hear him enter in the home. But let's say if we were in a split level and he came in on the kitchen level and we were downstairs watching TV, I could feel his presence by the shift of my mom and my sisters. The energy of the house would change. And it's a natural mechanism. This is my belief system, that if you are compromised in any of the traditional five senses, and you are in an environment in which you're lacking safety, you will develop additional senses in order to survive. I mean, it's just a mechanism of survival. And so, my life was not I wasn't in harm's way, but I wanted peace and tranquility and happiness and love and joy in the family. And when I didn't feel that when I felt discordance within my family members or the house, I quickly realized through the space of my second energy center that I could literally absorb, for the sake of other people's comfort, I would absorb the energy as if it were my own, so that there would be more peace in the house. So that's essentially what was happening. And so I would carry this energy as if it was my own, thinking as a small person that I was serving the household. And what I've now realized, that, we are not designed to carry other people's energy. In fact, that does disservice to the other person. We're robbing the other person or the environment of its natural journey of the lessons that they need to learn. So it took me a while to release the discordant energy and to really understand how to ground and to really lean into the trust and the security coming from the space of the first energy center and connecting with the frequency of the earth, knowing that I will always be loved, cared for, and supported by Mother Earth herself. You know, what a better gift can there be? But I had to really, that was a long journey for me. And that happened primarily when we were living internationally. We were living internationally for over a decade. And so I had to really find and utilize various different resources. I had to trial and error, you know, what works for me in this country, what doesn't work for me in this country, where can I find and resource my availability with the earth. And so that was a great learning experience for myself personally that I've been able to help pass on to other people. So depending upon where a person is located, the situation that they find themselves, or the environment, or what they choose to surround themselves, then we get to create those anchor points for people for their own healing journey. So that was part of my own personal transformation. And I could go on all day. I don't think you want me to, but it has been multidimensional as far as the healing is concerned. This chakra system, the human body never ceases to amaze me. Now, I've been a practitioner for 33 years. I'm beginning to kind of age myself. So I'm grateful that I have that experience of having the opportunity to put my hands on a large number of people and to be of support energetically for those people as well. So I've learned a lot. I understand now energetically and how the neurology of the spine and how uh, the nervous system supports the endocrine system, which then balances the hormones and the neuropeptides that run within the physical body, and how they are of a direct response to the environment in which we live in, and how what a fluid and relational field that we live in, and how we absorb these energies through the chakra system, and how it's multi-layered as far as the neurology of the body and releasing of trauma and aligning with genetic expressions of what may possibly be ours and what may possibly be inherited. So the chakra system for me it's like a diagnostic tool, if you will. Um, the complexity, again, the human body never ceases to amaze me, but I have just recently acquired a piece of technology. You know, for the first time, I have a piece of technology that helps validate some of the things that I've sensed and known and felt for years. And it is also showing me the opportunity to see the variability of these energy centers in relation to the stressors of our environment. So now I can get even more specific in treating the balance of the energetic system, integrating with the wholeness of the beautiful body that our spirit resides within.
Wow, wow. Yeah, well, in A Course in Miracles, there's a passage that says, "I'm not a body, I am free, I am just as God created me." How do you relate to that? Because it's an interesting thing, right? Because we are experiencing ourselves as bodies, but in energetically speaking, we are not bodies. We are something totally different.
We are. I have to say that, I hold space for others from a place of wholeness. Nobody comes to an interaction broken or fractured or dysfunctional, or, they're nothing other than whole. And that wholeness is a representation of, there is no separateness, again, between we are part of the whole of something that is much greater that exists outside of us. We are not of anything that's separate from that. So that's kind of how I would align with that phrase from the Course of Miracles as far as it being a representation from God.
It's a very important topic, right? Because you were speaking of the chakra system and all that, but also the understanding that you already are whole, right? That's part of what A Course in Miracles is also saying. You already are whole, and why do we have to look at all the things that are not working? Because we're misinterpreting what's going on, right? We actually are already whole. And that's a big one, right? Because of course we don't experience ourselves that way most of the time, right? So we do need to change. It's a constant practice in changing one's mind about the world and oneself. Yeah.
A conditioned response that creates the element of lack. I'm lacking of something or some part, or instead of being a part of the whole.
Seeing each other as whole, oneself as whole, one sees oneself as lacking, yeah, like you said. And that's quite a big shift. And so that's why for some people like me, it takes a long time to shift. And so, yeah, and I guess I'm not alone with that, but I guess there's also people who shift very quickly, which is probably very amazing. But so would you like so you've shared a lot about this connection between the energy and the body, and how the bodies, and then I think you were basically also saying what they say in the chakra when you work with chakra technique or energy, that the body responds to that, right? It changes because of what you do energetically or what you think.
Yeah, as bizarre as this sounds, and again, the woo-woo-ness factor has long passed for me, but when I'm in an expanded state and I get the pleasure of holding space for another person, literally I will feel within my physical body where the discordance is, because when we set it up I get the opportunity to greet spirit to spirit with another person, and then literally their spirit guides the whole process, and I just get to sense and say as it is delivered to me within my own physical body. And very rarely, and I think you'll be able to appreciate this, and that from an integrative standpoint, it's never just one energy center. It's never just the first energy center. There's the complexity behind how they all work together, that it happens rather fastly, that this alignment, if you will, occurs within the energetic body. But I operate from the premise that, we are 99.9% energy, and we are like 0.0111% matter. The physical body is the most dense of all the energetic systems that we work with. And sometimes it can be the slowest to respond. But in this relational field, in the biofield that surrounds us and that permeates, that we exist in this world with, we can make changes rather rapidly. I know that for me, when I view the human body, there's a correlation, if you will. I'm sure you've had this experience in that the lower three energy centers, that have to do with your safety, your trust, your creativity, and your autonomy, all those physical elements within the physical body, they are the slowest as far as the vibration. But I also know the innervation from the plexus that comes out there's more than one nerve plexus, but essentially they're getting information from various different highways of nerves coming out of the low back and the lower thoracic spine, and they're getting unmyelinated nerve fibers coming from the vagus nerve. So the information is more ingrained, it's slower to release the physical elements. Now, as we transition through the heart space, which is a beautiful, glorious energy center of its own, with its own toric field that expands into the relational field, that I believe is kind of like the connector, if you will, between the bridge between the physical domain and into more of like the spiritual domain of the higher energy centers located, 5, 6, and 7. And I'm just using the lower 7 just for reference today. All of us here know and acknowledge that there are many, many different energy systems or chakras that are available to us, as we exist. But just for today's conversation, just talking about the lower 7. I talked about the heart being the bridge, and then we work for every physical. This was the point I wanted to make. For every physical discordance, then there would be a corresponding energetic spiritual component that gets to be worked on. So from a holographic perspective, it's never just one energy center, as I was saying before. It's multitude, it's multidimensional within the physical body and the energetic body as well.
Everything plays a role, and every shift changes something. So yeah, but in the system that I learned, you also try to, you have an image, a set image that is supposed to correspond to perfect health, whatever that means to a person, right? And in A Course in Miracles, you might say perfect happiness or peace of mind, right? As the result. But anyways, you have an image that represents that, and then you change whatever needs to get closer to that image or to get that image fully there, right? And that's the beauty of it, because then it doesn't mean the same. It doesn't look the same for everyone, at least in the system that I learned. But the image does. The image looks the same, but what's going on to get there is different for everyone. So like you said, it's astonishing. There's never an end to how amazing all of this is.
It blows my living mind every time I get the opportunity to hold space. I agree with you. And the way I've kind of described this is that if somebody's looking for health, then really it's about the wholeness. They want to feel whole. Or if somebody's looking for love, then it's the joy that they wish to experience. If somebody is looking for, financial abundance, maybe it's freedom that they want to experience. And so it's never one set expression that aligns that person to that. Like if you're looking for wholeness for you is different than wholeness for me. And so as you unravel the layers of the healing according to the divine timing as to what their spirit feels that needs to be done at this time, then there is an ever evolving expression of what wholeness is. And I believe this is why I love having these conversations with like-minded people. We're saying the same thing, and it just perhaps in different words. That's what's so reassuring to me, so beautiful to me, that it's the depth, the origin of the outcome, and the depth behind it is the same regardless what foundation people come from.
That's a very important point when it comes to developing peace in one's own mind and with one another, is to be able to look beyond the borders of the particular words or systems that are being used to come to to the experiential basis of it all, and not the word base. The words are there to help us describe it so that one can share about it, but the experience is where it's coming from.
So very true. Oftentimes I find myself at a loss for words. And then, then when the person experiences that, I've had people come back and say, I really didn't understand what you were saying at the time that you were saying it, but now I because of X, Y, Z, I understand experientially. I understand now.
It's a huge difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and that's what we're exploring together, right? Is this going deeper and expressing what one's experiencing, and of course looking at what is in the way of feeling happy or being perfectly happy, right? So that we can change our, and of course Melville says you can't change the world, but you can change your mind about it with help, of course, from Holy Spirit. As the Course in Miracles says, it's your right mind, right? With that help, you can actually change your mind about almost anything until you actually are experiencing and understanding yourself as love and seeing yourself perfectly happy and others as well.
Mm-hmm. For me, my own personal belief system is that my healing will never be done. I will always be evolving, as long as I am on this physical planet and beyond, I will always constantly be transforming. I think that that's, the aspect of healing that is so multidimensional, and that there is no linear reality behind healing. For me, that's my belief system. People are like, well, I get constantly asked, well, how long is this going to take? And I honestly, I don't know. It depends on where they are in their healing journey and where their spirit feels the depth of what they need for this moment, or for this particular thing that they're looking to overcome. I just know that my world is it's always constantly evolving, and I know that that's true for everybody else as well.
Yeah, well, I guess one could say that there's always an even more refined way of seeing it, right? And so there you can always go deeper. So, and there's always stages, but behind it is that you're actually fully there already, right? So it's a very interesting thing, this idea that you're already fully there, and at the same time, exactly where you are is perfect, right? It's hard to grasp when you think of you're already there, then where you are is perfect, but it doesn't. But because of the way you're seeing the world at this point or interpreting it, it doesn't feel that way.
And that's a common viewpoint. And I think that that's why it makes it challenging to not feel like you're coming from a place of fracturedness, or or a space of lack. I get the conditioned responses, and it's we get constant reminders of that on a daily basis.
It's very, very powerful to come from where you're at, but we don't. We tend to get caught up in the feeling that it's not, right? And so it's a very important thing to look at. So when people ask how long will this take, the one of the question is what is happening now, right? And so we have no idea, and it always depends on what the person it thinks is the signal that it actually has happened, right? So the question is what would get us to to have the experience that has happened, right? What would
Mhm.
confirm that? And if we don't know, then we don't know, right? But if we can ponder it.
I think for me, that's why it's always important to manage expectations and to be clear about what their desired outcome is. And so sometimes there may be, some big outcomes that a person wishes to achieve. And then it becomes important to manage that expectation into smaller steps where they might be able to see the progress or the healing moving or transitioning in that direction. But if we're not having those conversations, then it sets up the stage for disappointment. Disappointment that they're not getting the desired outcome they perceived that they were going to get because there was never a discussion about the expectation of it.
That's a huge topic, like you said. It's an important to talk about, right? What do you expect? What do you want, right? That's why the technique that I learned with chakra technique, the first you would ask the person, "What do you want?" Right? And they tell you everything as much as they can think of at that time, what they want, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that one could actually get an idea what, and also that sets the energy in motion, right? Because you have a purpose, right?
Yeah. I have to say, though, I've learned over the years that sometimes people don't know exactly what it is that they are after. And so when I do my intake evaluation, and I'm sure the same is true for you, is that I want to know as much as I can about that person. And I mean everything from the nutraceuticals that they're taking to the relationship that they have with the people that they live with, to their interactions with pets, to the previous trauma that they may have had. I want to know as much as they can from a practitioner's standpoint so I can start to see areas or themes that may be showing up on various levels in their lives. Because then people may say, well, I think I want this, but really what they're avoiding is a deeper issue that resides within the energetic system that possibly they're not even viewing. So it opens up for some interesting conversations.
For sure. And if you talk about what you want, it often highlights what you think you're lacking.
Mm.
And so it's always this question: are you actually lacking that, or is it a misinterpretation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes all it takes is to see it differently, right? Or actually, always, it's always a change of mind that makes things
Yeah.
feel. Yeah, you get a totally different feel for it.
It's true. I mean, when I start to look at a person's overall energetic system, I start to view it, again, my background coming from neurology is an overexpression of an energy system where there may be an excess, um, a representation of excess, or if an energy system may be in a state of deficiency where it's underexpressed, and that because of the relationship of the energetic systems, it affects the entire expression of that being in how they align with what it is that as they align, I'm trying to say, as they align with higher versions or align with different versions of self, how they choose to genetically express themselves. So it's the complexity of a person viewing it as lax or changing their perspective about the balance or the homeostasis of their energy center. All of them will change how they show up in this world.
It also changes what you actually see. it
Say that again. Changes what?
changes how what you see,
Oh yeah, the perspective. Right, right.
right? So you don't. So if something has shifted, like I mean, one of the very easy examples, if you see someone crying a lot and you think they're crazy for crying, and then they tell you my mom and dad just died, and you'll suddenly be like, oh, then you'll start being compassionate. You'll see it totally differently. You're no longer seeing the person as someone crazy, but someone who's actually going through a process of loss, right? Where you can actually support them because you most likely have went through such processes yourself.
So very true. I have just an experience this morning. Um, I was getting a response from a patient whom has responded really well to care, and she was canceling. She had like 2 or 3 more treatments in the series that she was working through, and I'm reading, and I was trying to come from a place of neutrality and to view the email that I was reading as to what were the reasons why this person was canceling. And to make a long story short, the very last sentence said, I just got in from the dentist and I have to have a root canal and I financially need to reprioritize things. And so, at the very last, I got the full picture at the very last sentence. And so just like the viewpoint of, why is this person crazy and crying? Your perception changes when you get a bigger picture of the whole.
There's all kinds of things like that where you jump into a conclusion and then you get a little bit of information that helps you to see it completely differently. And so I think that's one of the things that the reason why the Holy Spirit, the right mind, right, is seeing it differently is because it has a much completer view of it and no longer is not fazed by some particular misinterpretation, but can see it correctly. And so I think that's what we're going for, right? And as it says in A Course in Miracles, and the Holy Spirit can help you to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence because you already are love. So it's a very powerful process.
Mm, mm. It's beautiful. I think that love is the foundation for receiving all that the universe has to provide for us. It's like it's what magnetically attracts that which you desire, consciously or subconsciously. But love is the foundation of that.
Course in Miracles says that we are love. We already are love. So that's why it can't teach us love. It's basically there to reveal. To reveal. You're learning to reveal that you already are love, right? And it's not about trying to prove that you're love or anything else, because you don't need to prove what's true. It also has this famous sentence at the beginning that sums it up. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. Or something that's very, very very clear words about how love is never threatened, right? In truth, and what isn't real is not a threat to what's real. So the peace of God lies in that, and so what we need to learn is that what is real, right? And to let go of all the misinterpretations that make us see things that are not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just love the image of knowing that the heart center has its own toric field that runs horizontal to the Earth's surfaces. So if, in fact, and this is my belief system, that if there's any, I don't want to use the word, the word that keeps coming to my mind, and again, this is if there's any energetic distortion, it is because we have allowed in our conditioned environments for those distortions to occur. So if the information is coming from the environment and coming through the biofield, and we're experiencing anything less than what you just described, it's something that was programmed within that energetic toric field as we are relating with the rest of the environment, front and back. Front and back. So I do think energetic distortions can disrupt our perception or our reality.
Yeah, there's always many ways to look at this, but what I'm speaking of is what A Course in Miracles is speaking of. We are responsible for our experience, and so we can also change our mind about what we're experiencing or what we think we're experiencing. I think that's the basis of it, and it's encouraging everyone to accept full responsibility without feeling guilty about it. So changing your mind is not something that is evil. You change your mind, and you can thereby experience and be more loving, right? Experience your own love and be more loving and see more love, or see love everywhere. And that's a good thing. And it's not a bad thing to give up all those ideas in which you are angry or sad or whatever else, right? Fearful and so on.
That first step of accepting full responsibility can be just a small hiccup for some.
You said a small hiccup appears like impossible to overcome in many circumstances, but yes, it's a beautiful thing when we, and that's also why the relationship to God is also an example of that in my understanding, because we are scared of God most of the time, even though so the question is, how do you see that? If God is a fearful thing, you are a fearful thing. If your source is fearful, then you're probably also a fearful being, right? And so it's a big thing. Where do I come from? And if I come from love, then how can I change my mind about myself? Because then I must be love too. I must be misinterpreting things here.
And I do see that split, the first energy center, the seventh energy center split, when there is that challenge. So, it's the matching. If you're living fear, if you are fearful and you're creating more fear in your world, the energetic, connecting with yourself with a higher dimension, and then the inability to deeply root into trust within the universe. I see that first and seventh split energetically quite often.
When we spoke about the seventh chakra, there were you can be totally open, meaning that you feel one, or you can feel totally alone, is the way it was described. So that is both possible. What our teacher was always saying, Martin Brofman, he was saying that you need to, every chakra can be open or closed, but what's important is that you can open and close it at will, and it's not so when it's stuck in one way or the other, then it's going to be quite difficult for you to navigate.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
I think I wish more people understood that the auto calibration that you're referring to within the energy centers is very real. And so, given upon, again, the fluidity of living in a relational field, we want to have the ability to open and close our chakras in order to preserve our own energy. And so I think that that's something that I wish more and more people understood.
It's always about the practical application of things, right? And so how do you apply this information, or for instance, A Course in Miracles, the information you get there, how do you apply it to your life? And is it helpful? And it's always the first question, is it helpful or not, right? That you will ask about most things that you do. And so, yeah, that's why, and when, the other thing is, do you have trust, right? That in the outcome, right? In the way you're doing it, right? It also says the means and the end need to be the same. So if you want to have love, the means to have love is to love, right? Or to experience love. So it's a very, so it's not the idea that you could create peace by being violent. That is, in that thinking, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to share that I haven't asked you about so far?
Goodness, I just enjoy having these conversations because I never know where we're going to go, what path we're going to head down. But I just appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation and to be in each other's space and each other's frequency, including all those that are joining us today and that will join us in the future. So thank you for holding this space, sincerely.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And yeah, it's so, yeah, it's this being in the place you're at, and always entails everything that's there. And so it's this ability to look at it, right? That we're exploring here, right? Let's look at it together and see what happens. And I think that's why it's always so exciting. Like you said, there's never an end to how exciting it can be. There's always more.
It's enriching. It's fruitful. It's where the juice is, where the goodness is. So thank you.
Very welcome. So does anyone who's here want to ask or comment or share something at this point? Okay, if not, we will come to an end slowly. Okay. Then I would like to thank you, Mary, for your being here, for engaging in this conversation, and for being willing to look at things in yet another way. I'm sure you've heard yourself speak very often, but it's always something new that comes up when you encounter someone else. So you can always discover something else as well. So that's why it's so helpful to speak with each other. So thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome. Thank you.
then I'd like to reach out to everyone who's listening, watching, or hears of this. Please review the podcast, get to know it, explore it. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out to me so that we can organize things, because it depends on all of you for the podcast to be what it is. If there's no guests, then there's no conversations like this one. And if there are guests, then there's more of them. And there's so many out there already. So please check out the previous ones as well if you're interested. And blessings to you all. Until next time.